All right, what's going on? This is the King Cam Ujumbe Podcast and Ujumbe Me's message. Yeah, it is another wonderful Sunday. I hope all is well with you. We're going to talk about the rise and fall. We're going to talk about Knights, Codes, and the Ethiopian Stronghold. What's going on? We are in the throes, in the midst of our summer session. I'm glad that you guys are here and get comfortable, get something right on and something right with. Um, this has already been an interesting trip because there's some people who decide to want to disagree with me and my research, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. So get you something to write on, sit back, relax. This is our second episode in this series, and so I'm glad you guys are here. Don't forget to greet everybody as you come in, and I'm shout out to the fam. What's going on, Brother Ferguson? I see you. What's going on? Yeah, and I see Mo is back. You got some homework to do, sir. He says, greetings, everyone. Not feeling too good, but I'm here. Okay. Take care of yourself. You just got back from a pretty decent vacation. I think you went to the DR, so you gotta drink the orange juice and get your life back on track. But I'm glad you guys are here. But get well, though. Get well. Okay, I see Brother Isu in the house, in the building. What's going on? Greetings, my people. Who wanted to disagree with me? Oh yeah, we're gonna find out. Somebody had something to say in one of the previous videos, and I responded, but they didn't respond. It's sometime I'm up, so I'm very. People don't understand. I am. Hold on, before we move further, people don't understand. Look, I'm quick. And my response, that recoil is fast. And if you want to say something slick on our platform or whatever, be ready. Okay. If you're going to disagree, tell me why and where you disagree. But we'll get to that in a second, though. So don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe and all the things. But we're gonna talk about the rise and fall, the Knights. Yeah, the European Knights. I got a lot of thumbs down on that. Man, they for different kind of people start entering the chat, entering the conversation. Bro, I didn't ask you to come here, but it is what it is. Knights, Codes, the Ethiopian Stronghold. So today, we're going to answer some of these questions here. What united Ethiopia, Kush, and Kemet as a sacred civilizational arc rather than isolated kingdoms? Most of the time, we tend to separate them. Thanks to the Berlin Conference, that mentality has successfully kind of been ingrained, right? So, that we see that now. We see how these kingdoms are being separated, okay? But they was once at one time together. The next thing is, how did these civilizations rise through divine order? There is an order. There is a process, believe it or not. And that's what that is. And fall through disruption of that order. Okay. So how did these civilizations rise through divine order and fall through disruption of that order, right? Number 3, who preserved the spiritual lineage after empire and the temple fell? And number 4, what does Ethiopia's guardianship of the ark? And I got to spin the block on the ark, Brother Mo. What does Ethiopia's guardianship of the ark and its living rituals teach us about spiritual continuity in the face of colonial erasure? Yes, sir. All right. So sit back, relax, get you something to get you a little something, a little beverage, a little popcorn or whatever. But we're going to engage in this conversation. You know what I'm saying? All right, here it is. So we're going to briefly discuss our 4 pillars, connecting the dots, recap, historical arc, who came and why. We're going to talk about the hidden pilgrims, Lalibela, the temple of the hidden code, Debteras, the defender orders. We always talk about the Knights Templar, Knights of Hospitality, and the European Knights, but Africa had their own orders, their own military rights, their own warriors. Got a few of them later on. We're gonna get to that. So we're gonna talk about Debteras and other defender orders, Ethiopian sacred knights, guardians of the ark, the final covenant, sacred rites and rituals. You know we got to do that. And I'm still checking roll. Yes, this is summer school. I don't care. You know what I'm saying? And I got my little Thundercat shirt on. If you know, you know. If you came through the 80s, yeah, it's good old Thundercat. You know what I'm saying? And I'm checking roll, like I said, and we got a little Q&A. So if you have any questions or concerns, get ready. All right. Now, a few weeks ago, we talked about Ethiopia, Kush, and Kemet, and we talked about how we connected the dots, because for too long we've been told that the civilizations of Africa were isolated, divided by borders, languages, and empires, right? So we talked about Ethiopian highlands. We talked about the cosmic setup, and matter of fact, we talked about the pantheon. A lot of these ancient customs had a similar culture, right? We talked about the Bahar of the god of waters. We talked about Ashtar. And matter of fact, Amun is a common concept around the Nile Valley. And we talked about the Wak, or the city, the sky god, right? Among the Kushite people, the Wak is the ultimate cosmic order. Okay. And once again, if you want me to discuss the ancient pantheon of the Nile Valley before Egypt, let me know. But yeah, the Nile River is the cosmic umbilical cord, and it flows through the highlands. It goes from Uganda all the way up, from the mountains of the moon all the way up into the Mediterranean. Okay, so we talked about that. We talked about the sacred geometry, and we did a bonus where how these temples, not just in Kemet. See, what happens is we hyper focus on Kemet, saying that Kemet is the only place where these temples were aligned to stars, aligned to the sun and the moon. We found out that in Nubia, they had them lined up like that, and even in Ethiopia. Okay, so we talked a little bit about that. But the bane of peoples is what got on people's nerves, what made them mad, is when I got this book right here. When I cracked this book open right here, and this is written by a non-African or African American of descent. This book, The Sign of the Seal, was written by Graham Hancock. And in this book, he said them folk was looking, they weren't going to Ethiopia looking for Prester John, they was looking for the Ark. And the Europeans kicked them out. I'm sorry, the Ethiopians, my bad, the Ethiopians kicked them out. Okay, so they was up there, the Knights Templar, and they went up there. They would call themselves trying to fellowship and everything with the Ethiopian Orthodox Church, because they would say, okay, since we're Christian, you guys are Christian, we cool. Not necessarily so. Not necessarily so. So what they did was they was being too nosy, and they were doing too much. In Ethiopia, their military and their priests kicked out the Muslims, and they kicked out the Knights. And I got a lot of thumbs down on that. I don't care. Your homeboy wrote it. You know what I'm saying? Hey, he wrote it. He said that they was out there being nosy, right? Yeah. We're gonna get into that. We're gonna get into the military orders a little bit later on. But yeah, we're gonna get into that. So yeah, that was the bane of that guy. That made a few people mad. It made a few people mad. So, and we talked about the archetypes and the human soul journey. And yeah, we did a bonus episode. We talked about the Amduat in the Book of Gates. Check that out when you get a chance. But yeah, we talked about that. We broke down the Amduat a little bit. We talked about the Book of Gates a little bit. Yeah. yeah. This see they straight up get upset when we would cite our own African American people, and they get mad saying that's Afrocentric, but then turn around when Nzungu writes it, they mad for real. Your friend wrote it. He wrote that. He wrote that. So you forgot I'm a historian for real. I went to college for this. So yeah, we finna go get down. Yeah, and this is written by one of their friends too. Okay, so yeah, I'm on one today, and I had some soda. So we talked about the Amduat. We talked about there was a difference between Amduat and the Book of Gates. We talked about that. And the Demet Kingdom, the Crossroads of Civilization. I didn't know about the Demet Kingdom. I didn't know about that. Okay. And the Red Sea trade route. So if you want to get into that, if you want to check that episode out, but we gotta continue. We gotta move on, right? But yeah, I gotta add on to the conversation because there's some people that is low-key upset with the words I say. I don't care. I don't, Y'all came to our little sacred space and place to uninvited to say what you need to say. But I'm gonna tell y'all in a minute what they said. Hold on. All right, greet everybody as you come in. Hey, Sister Haynes, what's going on? Yeah. They got the right person on the right day. And I had time. I got time. Oh yeah. So let's get to it. Now, the pillars, of course, we have our pillars, of course, in the Ujumbe podcast. We got 4 major pillars. The pillar Ethiopia, that's the first one. Ethiopia is the source of the sanctuary. Pillar number 2, Kemet, the blueprint of the sacred civilization. Kush in Nubia, the corridor of continuity, and pillar number 4, the hidden code. For the most part, this is where we're going to kind of rest. This is where our foundation is as far as a podcast. A lot of people would focus on a lot of different things, a lot of different areas, but based on the people's response, based on how they've been responding over the last couple of years, Ethiopia is where we should start. And I think so too. We begin where the Nile River begins. See what I'm saying? So it's very important that we deal with the grandmother, right? Grandmother Ethiopia. This is where the Nile takes its breath. The Nile, it gets its start. All the civilizations in Africa basically started with Ethiopia. Okay? And now dealing with Kemet, of course, we deal with the Kemetic science. We deal with the pharaohs, the Insubiti, and of course we did Queen of the South, which was fun. We talk about the temples. We talk about how they're the microcosm, they're the earthly representation of what's above, right? And of course, and Nubia, Kush and Nubia, then the hidden code. Kush and Nubia, a lot of people do not lean into Kush and Nubia. What happens when it comes down to the Nile Valley, when it comes down to the Nile Valley culture, they would just stop at Kemet as if there's nothing else. I've been learning a lot more about Kush and Nubia as we've been going along. Okay, I didn't know that Kush was one group and Nubia was another. Yeah. And of course, we deal with the. We're going to talk about that the next few weeks. I got a bonus. I got another bonus. I know I've been trying to deal with the streams and stuff like that, but I have something else too. And of course, the hidden code, when we deal with esoteric knowledge and symbolism. A lot of you guys have been craving that, so we're going to get into the Kemetic science and the Kushite science as often as we can, whenever we can, right? That's where we are. And if you enjoy that kind of stuff, if you like that kind of stuff, like and subscribe. If you do not, don't be the ones that hit the subscribe button and then unsubscribe like in an hour. Like, dog, if this ain't for you, it ain't for you. That's how I feel about it. I'm not the type of person that's caught up on a lot of people, a lot of followers. I don't care about that. I want the people that want to be here. Okay, that's how I feel. Okay, and so in this case, we're dealing with Ethiopia, Kemet, and Kush in a sense, right? So let's go. Here it is. So tonight, basically, we're going to return to the sacred corridor where myth and memory and they all connect, right? Africa's highlands held firm as the world around them shifted, fell, and was forgotten. This is not just to me, it's not just a story. This is a journey, right? It's about guardianship. It's about sacred rites of passage. It's about knowledge being passed down, right? As temples were burned in Kemet and secrets were buried beneath the conqueror's feet, right? Ethiopia stood unmoved, unbothered, okay? Its monasteries still humming with chants over the centuries, the scrolls still being written, and their information was untouched by Rome, Mecca, or anybody else. So within her mountains, They had sacred blueprints remain encoded in rock and in sacred rites. Okay, so we're going to be talking about spiritual defenders, hidden orders, monks who move like mystics, and the warriors. See, there was a discussion. I'm on TikTok also, but there was a discussion where these folk were talking about it was a different kind of group, and they was talking about Ethiopia, and they were saying that Ethiopia was one-sided when it come down to just praying. I said, no, they had an army too. You know, they can pray and throw hands too, right? So they had the monks, but they also had the warriors too. And so above all, Ethiopia's greatest secret was the Ark of the Covenant. Yes, sir. Yeah, the Ark of the Covenant. We're going to get into that. But this ain't like my favorite movie, Indiana Jones, Raiders of the Lost Ark. This is a process. This is a journey, right? This is unseen most of the time, right? Most people don't know about that. Most people don't understand. They hear about it. So tonight we're going to talk about the rise and fall of Knights, Codes, and Ethiopian Stronghold, right? So like I said, we often hear about Ethiopia, Kush, and Kemet as separate kingdoms divided by time and terrain. But the reality is they were organs of a greater body. Okay, they were all connected into one system. Okay, stretching from the Ethiopian mountains down to the Nile Delta. Not scattered empires, but they was connected centers of sacred stewardship. Each one had a certain role. Ethiopia had a role, Kush had a role, and Kemet had a role, right? These weren't just political states, as we will see today. They're spiritual custodians of cosmic covenant, right? And so each region contributed to a divine continuum. All of them was connected, and all of them had a purpose, right? It was rooted in ancestral law, natural alignment, and divine kingship, right? This is not an empire. This is a ecosystem, right? So, but there were some issues. We're going to get to this series in a second. You know there's some invaders. There were some invaders. Hold that thought. So, but before we get to that, the mission of the stewards, okay, of the stewardship, the leaders, the priests, kings, their goal in this process, in this time, was to uphold Ma'at, for some kind of divine order. This meant balancing justice, protecting the land, feeding the people, building the temples, and with a line to stars and divine purpose, right? And so the Nile was more than a river. Like I said many times, it was an umbilical cord, right? Ethiopia's mountain springs down to Egypt's delta, they had astronomy, okay? They had astronomy, they had metallurgy, they had temple rites and royal protocols, and agriculture, right? So astronomy. It was charted. A lot of the astronomy was, and Baba Yakia, he still, shout out to him, he's still wrestling with the idea as to how the ancient ancestors received this knowledge. Okay, we're gonna rule out aliens, History Channel. So, but this knowledge was passed down from generation to generation, from now to year. So it went from Ethiopia to Nubia to Kemet, and metallurgy, how they made metals, how they was able to build and transform them into the instruments of ritual or weapons, right? Temple rites, mystery schools, the traditions preserved in stone. It went from the Ethiopian monks down to the Kemetic priests. And the priest of Amun was something serious. We learned about that, right? So we learned about that. So the priest of Amun was something, and royal protocols rooted in ancestral law, maintained through oral tradition and sacred texts, right? Now, but there was an issue. Okay, there was a problem. When it came down to them being sovereign, when it came down to them being an empire, folk wanted to invade. So we have this series. So when we speak of the rise and fall, don't picture a single peak or a crash, right? This situation was going through Taseti, the land of the bow, and Tabneta, the land of gods. So it was always movement, but in this movement, people try to interrupt that. And so we had the Assyrians. They had brutal military campaigns, and which pushed into Egypt from the Mesopotamia area, from Iran and Iraq and all in places. And they went into Egypt, and then they threatened the Kushite autonomy in the 7th century before Common Era. Now, by this time, we have to understand, by the 7th century before Common Era, like the 700s BC, Egypt, Kemet as an empire was already old. You understand? So by the time Assyria landed into Kemet, she was already 4,000 years old. Okay? The kings and the keepers of that knowledge was already, it was already lost, right? In a sense, right? So Kushite kings like Taharka, he led resistance campaign symbolizing the spiritual battle for the Nile. He really was trying to regain the Nile River for the Nile Valley culture. He knew something was coming. He knew something was happening, right? So we got to deal with King Taharka. We got to deal with him, okay? We hardly talk about the Nubian king. We will get to that though. But yeah, King Taharka saw something. So he, one of the greatest rulers of the 25th dynasty of Egypt, came from the royal house of Kush, Nubia's powerful kingdom to the south. Okay, his reign was 690 to 664 before Common Era. He marked the time when the African kings ruled over a reunified Nile Valley. Now, don't get it twisted. The original people of Egypt or Kemet were African people and of African descent. So a lot of people were trying to say the Nubians were the black pharaohs and Egypt were something else. No, they was all African and of African descent. So he blended, of course, Nubian and Egyptian tradition under the vision of divine kingship and Ma'at. But this golden moment faced the storm in the northeast, the rising power of Assyria. Okay? Now, under kings like Esarhaddon and later Ashurbanipal or whatever, Ashurbanipal sought to expand their empire westward and saw Egypt as a prize. But Taharka, he wasn't playing. Okay? He's known for his military strength, religious devotion, and architectural legacy. He rose to defend the sacred lands of Kemet. So, Ta-Neter, Nubia, the land of the bow, Ta-Neter, they entered the chat and they started to make their defense. They started to attack the Assyrians from the south. Okay, here's for Brother Mo. He likes maps, so I got a map for Brother Mo. Here it is. So as you can see, the Assyrian Empire is dark green and light green, right? This is towards the end of the reign of Kemet, right? So you can see they were all over the place except down here. Okay, in 671 before Common Era, Esarhaddon invaded and briefly took Memphis or Mennefer. Memphis, as we discussed, is basically in the north, right? And it was a key northern stronghold because that was one of the major cities of Kemet. Okay, Mennefer, and of course the other one is Thebes or Waset. And so Thebes was in the south. Okay, further south. And Taharka regrouped, however, and he launched a counterattack that temporarily reclaimed territory and reasserted Kushite control. Okay, he tried. Okay, and we have to understand that at this point, the tidal wave was happening. Okay, and Kemet wasn't the same Kemet of Amenhotep or even Ramses II, because when Ramses II was living, they weren't doing all that, right? So, but the struggle intensified in 667 before Common Era. Ashurbanipal sent a stronger force, like I said, a wave. It was just a wave of attacks, right? And despite fierce resistance, Taharka was eventually forced to retreat down to Nubia. Okay, the Assyrians installed puppet rulers but they could never truly erase the spiritual and cultural power of the 25th dynasty. And in my opinion, the 25th dynasty was the last strong dynasty of Kemet, in a sense. Okay, just let me know if I'm wrong, but I think they were just the last one. They was the last one. So Taharka's fight wasn't just military; it was cosmic. It was very important. Okay, just like Sebek Neferu, but she had to deal with the infighting in the Middle Kingdom. Now we have Taharka, right? He saw himself as a protector of divine order against chaos. Okay, temples in Karnak, Gebel Bakal, and Nubia bear witness to his deep spiritual commitment. We can't say enough about King Taharka. We may have to do something about that. We may have to have a special episode about that. But his legacy is one of resistance, resilience, and renewal. Though he lost the battlefield, he won the memory. He's remembered as the last great pharaoh to unify Egypt and Nubia under African rule. Now, if you want to know more about King Taharka, type Nubia in the comments. If you want to know more about King Taharka and the kings of the South, all right, we talked about the queens of the South a little bit, about the kings of the South, type Nubia. All right, shout out to Melvin Reed. What's going on, Melvin Reed? He says, teach what you preach. Yeah, I gotta do that. Gotta do that. Brother Mo, he said, thanks for that map, Cam. It shows where and how much power they had. They did. They had a lot. Let me go back to it. Let me see if I can go back to it. Yeah, they had a lot. But this, remember, this is towards the end. This is towards the end of the reign of Kemet. Okay? We have to understand Kemet was in power for 4,000, at least 4,000 years as a nation. 4,000 years. And there was 4 golden ages, right? So, yeah. By that time, Kemet was already old, was already senile in a sense, right? Where the culture was kind of being diluted, the knowledge was being lost or passed down, and then all these other issues. And of course, there was some pharaonic issues and who was really the legit pharaoh versus who was not, and that kind of thing, right? And so, yeah, we have to understand that, yeah, this was a very long time. Okay. Now, what were some other external forces? All right. Yeah, the fam saying Nubia. Yeah. We're going to get into that. We're going to be, it's a must. If we're going to talk about the Nile Valley, we got to talk about all of it, right? Yeah, Nubia. Okay. The people have spoken and all the things. Okay. So what were some other external forces? Okay. We kind of alluded to some internal forces where the priests versus the pharaohs and those kind of political issues, that kind of thing. But there was some external things, right? And of course, we know the Persians and the Romans. Okay, the Persians and the Romans, right? Persians, Darius and Cambyses invaded Egypt and attempted to reach Ethiopia, referred to the land of incense and gold. So the Persians were trying to cut through and go down south. The Ethiopians were never conquered. Okay, the Ethiopians were never conquered. Okay, the text described Cambyses' army being swallowed by the desert. And not to mention them Nubians and people in Sudan wasn't having it neither. So we have Persians. They failed. Yes, by the time they came, they swept through the Nile Delta. Of course, Kemet was compromised, okay, militarily. Then we had the Romans and the Byzantines. Fast forward a little bit. While Egypt fell to Roman rule, Ethiopia's Aksumite Empire grew strong and even minting its own coins. Okay, so when Rome and the Byzantine, and then later the Byzantine Empire, like Constantinople and many others, came and set up shop in Kemet, Ethiopia had its own business going. Okay, they had their own money, building obelisks, creating Christian tradition, independent from Rome. The Ethiopian church is not a white man's religion. Okay, that's for free. All right, so the Christian tradition, they had a different setup independent of Rome when they had the Nicene conferences and all that thing. That was a European thing. The Coptic church and the Ethiopian church wasn't involved. Okay, now let's continue. Then we have the Arab expansion. That, in my opinion, was the final blow for for Kemet. Okay, because by the 700s AD, the Arabs came in. Okay, and of course, many found solace in Ethiopia. Ethiopia did offer sanctuary to early Muslims during the Prophet Muhammad's peace be upon him and all that. And his family, the Prophet Muhammad did. They left their area and went to Ethiopia. Okay, yet it remained staunchly Christian. They said, yeah, you can be here, but this is what we're doing here. Okay, and so what happens is whenever, okay, let me go get off the screen. Whenever a major religion, and I'm going to say this once, and I know this is not theology class, but I'm going to say this. Whenever most major religions had to get developed, where did they get their development from? They got their stamp of approval from Africa. Okay. The Exodus, what did they come out of? Egypt. Okay. When Jesus went to when him and his mom and them had to go into hiding from the tyrannical king or whatever, where did they go? Egypt. When Muhammad was getting persecuted in his own land, where did he go? Ethiopia. All right. For free. But we have to realize that Africa is the incubator for not just history, but also religion. Okay. I know it reminds me of John Henry Clark, but yeah, Dr. John Henry Clark said that a lot. Okay. So, but in this case, the Arab Islamic expansion, they call it the Hijra to Abyssinia. And also, some people may say Abyssinia for Ethiopia, or they may say Habasha. The spelling, it starts with an H, but it's Habasha. It marks an early moment of interfaith diplomacy. Then we had the Portuguese and Jesuit missions. So we had the Arab invasion. Then we had the Portuguese a couple, like 100 years later. I'm sorry, like 500 to 600 years later, from 700 all the way to 1500. Portuguese military and Jesuit missionaries attempted to realign Ethiopia with Roman Catholicism, and they weren't playing that. They weren't doing all that. So no, we're not. No, we're not. You can't come here and say that your Christianity is better than ours. No, you are a guest here, and that you can't be coming to somebody else's house telling them what to do. And that was their problem. Okay, we can fellowship, we can break bread, but you can't sit in here and tell me that your brand is better than ours, where even your book says that we're up there in Genesis chapter 10. Portugal and Jesuit, they weren't there. And Moses, since we're dealing with the ark, fam, Moses' wife named Zipporah, right? Okay, Zipporah is, from what I'm told and based on my study, is Ethiopian. And his father was already the priest of the Most High God before all of this. His father's name was father-in-law was Jethro. Okay, so their interference led to the exile of foreign priests and reaffirmation of the Ethiopian Orthodox Tawahedo Church. We will talk more about them in a few minutes, because somebody was mad and thumbs down in my stuff and everything. they was mad. I made everybody mad that day. I don't care about none of that. Yeah, now for Ethiopia convert to Christianity twice. I got you. But the thing is, let me know I knew about the first time, okay? But let me know when the second time. That's pretty cool. Shout out to Volta. He adds value to the conversation. We have some, yeah. So and I just wanted to know, was it the just let me know in the chat when was the second time, okay? But yeah, shout out to Volta. He adds value to the conversation. I really appreciate that. Thank you. We all learn it together. But yeah, the same Portuguese. Yeah, it's some, and I think that some of them did kind of yield to some of that Roman Catholicism or whatever, but a lot of them said, nah, bro. But just let me know. All right. Appreciate it. Now, here it is. We got British colonial presence. Britain's attempt to control Ethiopian trade. They said, no, we can't really deal with them on a religious level. However, we're going to try to finesse them with this money. So Britain's attempt to control Ethiopia's trade routes and natural resources, especially during the scramble for Africa, were met with spiritual and military resistance. They weren't playing. Menelik II's victory at the Battle of Ottawa in 1896 was not just a political triumph, but it was a sacred defense of ancestral sovereignty. Britain was trying to do it they couldn't do it through force. They were trying to do it through finesse. And of course, where Ethiopia is, it opened the trade routes to India and all them other places, right? Yeah, so they were trying to do that. Okay, so they converted the nation, but the people weren't having like, yeah, they did. Yeah. Yeah, the East originator of it all. Yeah, Brother Ferguson says the East originator of it all. Yeah, he said, like he says, Brother Ferguson says, Eli says to the East backwards. All right. And so Britain was trying to figure out a way to get in, and Menelik wasn't having it. He wasn't playing. So, but if you're enjoying the content, like and subscribe so you don't miss anything. But don't hit the subscribe button and then turn around and say, "No, he making me mad and whatnot." I'm making a lot of people mad. I don't care. But let's get an understanding. Let's learn together, right? This is a fellowship. Okay, we're all in this journey together, right? So when people say Ethiopia was never colonized, it's not just about war. This colonization was about memory. It's about spirit. Every time an empire came with chains or creeds, Ethiopia stood as a temple unfolding. They weren't playing. Okay. So, yeah, Ethiopia had its own thing going. Okay. Now, the Hidden Pilgrims, Templars, and the African Gate. Yeah, I'm spinning the block on that because some folks was real upset about them black people kicking out them good old Templars out of there. All they wanted to do was show love and kindness, and be kind to one another, like the movie. That's all they want to do. Yeah. Okay. Volta saying Susenyos the first converted to Catholicism briefly before he was dethroned and orthodoxy was restored. They weren't playing with that. Yeah, you can do that if you want to. Yeah. There were some times when it did happen. I do agree. I stand corrected. Shout out to the fam. That's what's up. Yeah, they weren't having that. Yeah. But yeah, so after Crusades and the Knights Templar emerged, as a powerful military and spiritual brotherhood. They were warrior monks sworn to protect the Roman Catholic interest, but their mission soon became esoteric. It became symbolic, right? And their base beneath Solomon's Temple in Jerusalem gave rise to rumors that they had recovered ancient relics, scrolls, sacred technology, or even knowledge of the Ark itself. But in 1307, as we know, well, some people know that the Templars were betrayed. And I'm gonna say this though. Speaking of the Templars, a lot of people nowadays, in the last couple of centuries, like the 20th century on up, they would use Knights Templar symbolism and whatnot, but it would be from a Protestant viewpoint, not realizing that the Knights Templar was French and Roman Catholic. You're welcome. So, but yeah, some escaped, dealing with the betrayal of the French crown, and the Pope was on their head, and some escaped. And the legends say that they journeyed south, and not just to hide, but to reconnect to something older. Okay, now this is where the legend of Prester John shows up. Okay, they start looking for this cat named Prester John. They start looking for him. They say, "Hey, where's Prester John? Where he at? And and where can we find him?" And they were really looking for Prester John for a minute, and they were really seeking after this man, and not realizing that Prester John may or may not have been a real person. Yeah. So, but okay, you're looking for Prester John. Here you go. Right. So, as early as the 12th century, European kings and popes wrote letters to this mysterious sovereign in Ethiopia with his ancient Christian tradition, divine kingship, monk orders of rituals, and the monks and rumored guardianship of the art became the likely homeland of this legend. So they weren't just looking for a dude named Prester John; they were looking for the art. Okay, but before we go further into that, though, I got a review. Got a review. Before we get into it, I got a review. All right. Now, the question was based on the video, Connecting the Dots, Sacred Links Across East Africa. The question was this, y'all. Which European military organization had close encounters with ancient Ethiopia? I underline European. Okay. The Knights Templar, the Ottomans, the Magi, the Copts. But now, get this. These people were picking the Ottoman Empire. I said European. But if you were paying attention, and if you got it correctly, you got an A for the day. If you got it correct, you got A for the day. You know what I'm saying? Now, so dealing with the hidden pilgrims and templars and the African gate. Last week, in my recap, here it is. This for Brother Mo. Here it is. I had to go and deal with this. Last week in my recap video, the gates of the Duat, Book of Gates, Duat, and the Soul's Journey in African Mysticism. Here it is. This person said this. He said, all false. That was his comment. His name is All Is on ALLIS1. All is one, I guess. 365. All is one, 365. It doesn't have a person's face. My response was this: when you are saying it is all false, what sources do you have to counter this information? Or did you come here to argue? Yep. Every now and then he would show up and he would say this is false or what. I say, okay, I'm showing you the books. I'm even referring to some of your people, some of your colleagues, some of their books. And you saying all of it's false? Which one, which segment, which section is false? And if it's all false, do you have something else? Do you have a counter? He has yet to answer. Yeah. I get that sometimes, y'all. I get, people saying it's all Afrocentric or it's all wrong or whatever. Okay, if it's wrong, let me know where it's wrong. Or some, but you know what I learned about some people? Check this out, man. This is what I learned about some people. Some people would argue just because they want attention, or they don't know how to say, hey, I don't know this and I need to learn. Some people argue in hopes that you would teach them low key, but I don't have time for that. I would kick clowns out. I would kick clowns out of class. I would do that. Brother Ferguson said, Ray Ray and them mom said so. No, it wasn't Ray Ray and them mom neither. I think it was it was Susan and them. It was one of them. Yeah. Yeah, he just wanted to be heard. Yeah. He said the Pentamak lesson was powerful. I really appreciate that. Yeah, we may have to get back to that. Because we're gonna really go further south and deal with We're not done with the Penamac and the Nubians. We're not done with that. Yeah. But yeah, Ray and him says so. Yeah, a lot of this stuff they get is from sound bites, TikTok, and Betty Crocker. A lot of this stuff is homemade. And what really makes them upset is when you ask them where did they get that information from. You have your sources, you have your references, you have articles, you have books, but then when you ask them, hey, if it's wrong or if it's a different opinion, where did you find that? Now all of a sudden they mad and want to call you all kind of names and everything. You know, we're just having a civil conversation. We're just having a conversation, right? He said, "Leave Susie alone from the mountains." Well, you know, they the ones that emerge from the mountains and cause chaos like this. You know, Brother Ferguson says, "Leave Susie alone," and they from those mountains. Well, they the ones who came out the mountains, started doing all this. Spent a lot of time fighting each other, 100 Years War and everything. When they got through fighting each other, they want to fight it. They want to fight the whole world, bro. Just say you're hungry. Just say you want some chicken. Shoot. Just say that, bro. Just say you know you need a hug. You know what I'm saying? Come on, chill out. So that's what that was. All right. So yeah, in Ethiopia, dealing with the Knights Templar in Ethiopia, they 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 found a lot. They found a few things, right? They found a priesthood older than Rome, steeped in solar and lunar rites and Judaic memory. They found churches carved into the mountains aligned with the stars. They found monks who chant coded Zima that resonated with angelic frequencies. They found a kingdom ruled by Solomonic kings, echoing the Templars' own devotion to Solomon's wisdom. You talking about King Solomon? They doing that work, very similar to Sobek Neferu, where she was exemplifying what the Egyptian priests were reading about. He said, "You heard about this, but we're doing this. We're doing the work, right?" Yeah. And so I think Brother Ferguson, what he said, "Yeah, we're over here in this nice little corner learning. Yeah, we all over here in King Cam Ujumbe Podcast. We all fellowship and we learning. We don't need all that negative attention. We don't need all that over here." Yeah, I get it. But yeah, so that's what they found. They found the priesthood. They found churches duly established. They found a system already done. They found monks and in order. That's what they found. Okay. Now we discussed the Knights Templar, but we will be talking about the military orders of Ethiopia in a few minutes. So get ready for that. Yeah, I'm excited about that. Yeah. Shout out to Mo. He asked the question, what about the other? What are some other military orders in Africa? Yeah, we're gonna get to that. So far we talked about the 4 pillars, connecting the dots. We did a recap, historical arc, who came and why, the hidden pilgrims, Lalibela, we're gonna get into that, the Debteras and Defender orders, Ethiopia's sacred knights. We're gonna get into that. Guardians of the Ark, the Final Covenant, sacred rites and rituals, and I'm checking roll. And I may have something esoteric on my sleeve too. Now, Lalibela. Okay, Lalibela, the temple of the hidden code. See, in the 12th century, King Lalibela of the Zigwe dynasty commissioned a series of rock-hewn churches unlike anything in the world, right? Carved directly into the living stone of the Ethiopian highlands. These 11 monolithic churches were said to have built with divine assistance, completed in a miraculously short time through a fusion of royal vision and angelic labor. But these weren't just churches; they were, of course, blueprints, right? And so, it was 11 churches, right? And it was built out of living rock. In other words, they didn't carve it out of a quarry and then move it to that location. They just cut everything out in one place, right? And so, in this case, I'm sorry, let me get back to that. Dealing with that, Lalibela was meant to be the New Jerusalem, right? It was built. Its symbolism runs far deeper. Scholars and mystics alike point to several layers of sacred coding within it. It had an astronomical alignment. Okay, certain churches align with solstice sunrises and constellation points, marking seasonal thresholds and divine appointments. And of course, we discussed the underworld descent. The complex begins with churches associated with suffering and descent. Then it ascends upward towards resurrection and divine union, mirroring the ancient mystery schools path from death to rebirth or resurrection, right? They also had initiatory pathways. The narrow passageways and symbolic trenches serve as spiritual tests, requiring purification, silence, and surrender before one can reach the heart of the complex, which, for example, like the Church of St. George or the Church of St. Mary. Some believe that Lalibela is not just symbolic of Jerusalem, but it can be pre-Christian or pre-Judaic. It connects to the Judeo-Christian African temple science. Many of its chambers reflect older system, okay, an older monotheistic religion, okay. So it is if, say, for example, as if King Lalibela wasn't trying to mimic the Holy Land, he was revealing what came before that. That's what I think. I think he wasn't just trying to imitate Jerusalem. He was trying to make something. He was trying to resurface or resurrect the old way or the old path of Ethiopia, right? And remember, the oral tradition says, for example, the ark was present in Ethiopia long before Lalibela, before he even came into existence. Some even believe that one of the churches was constructed over a sacred line or sacred area to amplify, say, the ark's energy, the ark's power. Okay, Lalibela then is a temple encoded full of vibration, full of power, where stone and sound and shadow create a living interface with the divine or with the Neteru, right? So when you walk, if you ever get the chance to travel, go to Lalibela, you don't just go underground, you go inward. That's a journey. One day I am going to road trip to Ethiopia. I am going to do that. You know what I'm saying? And I'm going to take a bunch of pictures. But yeah, I want to go. I want to visit the family in Ethiopia. But now, here it is. Debteras and Defender Orders, Ethiopia's Sacred Knights. Yep. But before I get to that, I got a question. Before I get to that, I got a question. Now, throwback 90s R&B or Gen Z trap soul. Okay, like Jacquees and SZA and them. So we got throwback 90s R&B or trap soul. Y'all like and comment below. Let me know. Throwback R&B, or Mo says throwback 90s R&B, like Genuine in them. They had the baby hair. Volta says, likewise, King, trip to Ethiopia, most definitely on my list. Yeah. It is. If I had the money, Lord's will, if I had the money, I would do a massive road trip from Ethiopia all the way up to Nile Valley. That would take some months, but I would do that. What's going on, Edwin? What's going on, Brother Moore? He's he came to figure out what's going on with this art. He came to figure that out. Yeah, throwback R&B. What's going on? Shout out to the fam, Brother Ferguson. So the verdict is passed. Okay, the people have spoken. 90s R&B. So be it. Okay, African royalty. Shout out to the fan. Peace, Brother Cam. I picked throwback. Yeah. It had when I'm gonna say this. Man, look, That girl had Jodeci in them out there in the desert with leather pants, singing, "Baby, I'm begging." I'm just saying, in the desert, leather pants, or you in the rain, like boys to men talking about you down on bending knee and everything with a tuba player next to you. Yeah, man. Yeah. So yeah, 90s R&B wins. Yeah. Yeah, road trip. Yeah, man. Well, I gotta fly. We gotta fly first. You know what I'm saying, and then go. Yeah, I'm saying that I want to be able to go to Ethiopia, fellowship with the fam down there, then go to Sudan because we gotta chop it up with the fam in Sudan, and and the Aswan people, then go to Kemet. Yeah, yeah. Well, he has a interesting proposition. One day you get a trip together for the channel, and we can all go. Man, that'd be cool. That'd be cool. Yeah, that'd be cool. He said, yeah, back down the Nile Valley. Yeah, going down up south. Yeah, going from Ethiopia all the way up. Yeah, that'd be cool. Yeah, but it's still a road trip, man. You know what I'm saying? Go out there and fellowship and everything. All right, let's go. All right, so the Debteras and defender orders. Okay. Yeah, there is a lot of issues going on in Sudan right now. It is, um, and their brothers and sisters, and the same thing going on in Ethiopia. Really, it's and meanwhile, Europe is watching. Yeah. So Debteras and defender orders, Ethiopia's sacred knights. And so Debteras was more than we got to deal with the hidden warriors, the hidden orders of the Ethiopian world, or the Nile Valley world, the ones the world forgot. We heard about Templars, we heard about the Knights, in Europe, but we even talk about, sometimes we know about the samurai, and things like that. But what about Debteras, right? Now, the Debteras were more than priests. Okay, they were more than priests. They were mystical scribes, exorcists, astronomers, and protectors, trained in secret. Often from childhood, they memorized sacred books that were never written down. Okay, so yeah, some information may be written down, but there's some things that are going to them from mouth to ear that outsiders may not get. Right? And Debtera perform powerful incantations and carry amulets encoded with divine names and cosmic formulas. They defended the land with words as much as weapons. They didn't just pray. They didn't. They not just pray and everything. They kind of threw hands too. They defended the land with the words and as much as weapons. And they stood at the crossroads of medicine and magic, scripture and science. You need them both. You need all of these things. What happens is we hyper focus on one and neglect the others, right? And so we have the Debteras, the Zamani. I may be pronouncing it wrong. Shout out to the family Ethiopia. Let me know. The Zamani warriors, a term used for those trained in the spiritual art of liturgical chant as a form of energetic warfare. The Zima wasn't just music; it was protection. Chanting the right tone at the right time was believed to create shields, awaken the angels, even the Netaru or the ancestors, or even disrupt enemy spells. Because in Africa, we believe it's not just a physical warfare, but there is a spiritual warfare, right? These chants could call down divine energy into real-time situations, elevating their community's vibration in the face of oppression. That's the Zemini War. This is a picture of the Zemini Wars. I think it's about 100 years old. They have their shields, they have their spears or their guns. They ready. Okay. Them shields and them swords weren't just for show. Okay, okay, it wasn't just symbolic. It wasn't just ritual. You gonna get that. So, yeah. So now we have the order of Tekle Haymanot. Tekle Haymanot is centered at the sacred monastery of Debteras, Lebanos. The order is built upon the life of Ethiopia's most beloved saint. Tekle Haymanot is said to have stood in unbroken prayer for 7 years until one of his legs gave out. That's a long time to pray. That is a very long time, right? He prayed for 7 years. Would you pray without breaks? No break. Okay. He prayed until his legs gave out. Man. Okay. In iconography, he is depicted with wings symbolizing the divine service, his ability to transcend, and his role as the protector of the spiritual realm. Okay. Now, his order combined monistic discipline and divine guardianship. They were spiritual sentinels who held vigil not only over sacred books and relics, but over the energetic gate between the heaven and the earth. Okay. The wings of Tekle Haymanot are not myth, they are metaphor. He's the embodiment of sacrifice, inner flame, and spiritual vigilance. Okay. Yeah. Let's see what the family's saying. Yeah, that is some committed faith. Yeah, you have been praying for 7 years and your legs give out. Yeah, that deacon prayed a long time. But yeah. He was committed. Brother Moore said he was committed. That's real committed faith. Yes, sir. Yeah. And so now this is a picture. This is King Tekle Haymanot of Gajam. Okay, this is, of course, it's the original Tekle Haymanot, and this is somebody who named himself after him. Okay, from 1847 to 1901. Okay, he was a ruler in Ethiopia in the late 1800s. Okay, he named himself after Tekle Haymanot. Okay. Now, and in more recent centuries, Ethiopia's divine defense orders expanded, right? They expanded under the order of Tekle Haymanot. They expanded under Emperor Menelik II. That's the guy. That is the guy. Okay. He wasn't playing with nothing and nobody. Okay. We know about Haile Selassie, and shout out to the fam and everything, but Emperor Menelik II, he wasn't joking. He was not joking. So he had the Royal Cavalry and Elite Guards extension of sacred law. So Emperor Menelik, he was a military strategist. Okay. Before battle, many of the soldiers underwent spiritual blessings and tactical instruction in monasteries, receiving both spiritual training and martial training. Okay. Their warfare was seen as an act of divine justice. Okay. Remember, the British were at their gate, and they defended themselves against the Jesuits and everybody else. And here comes this new group that's showing up, right? And so their warfare was seen as an act of divine justice, an outward manifestation of the kingdom's inner covenant with heaven. Remember, Menelik I was, according to their tradition, was Makeda, was Solomon and Makeda's son, who brought the ark with him. You see what I'm saying? So now we got one more. The orders of Ethiopia. We got the Kafar warriors. All right, this is modern era. Okay, the Kafar people, also known as the Danakil, are a Kushite ethnic group primarily residing in the Horn of Africa, specifically in the Afar region of Ethiopia, Eritrea, Djibouti. They were renowned for their warrior culture and traditional weaponry, including the carved knife. As you can see, this young gentleman, he got right here, known as the Jili. I told you, this stuff wasn't just for show. Okay, you can get that work too. So anybody can get it. You see his face. He wasn't playing, right? So Ethiopians didn't just Ethiopians knights didn't wear the armor like we would see on TV. They wore white robes. Their swords was the scripture. The swords were real swords too. Their battlefields were spiritual and often invisible. So these defender orders upheld like a covenant when the say Jesuit ministries would come, the Turkish armies or the Ottoman Empire or internal threats came to undermine the spiritual code of Ethiopia. It was these hidden groups, these hidden lineages that stood in the gap, guardians not just of land, but language, chant, culture, and sacred rite. Yeah, they were the keepers of the ark. We got the ark in a minute. The ark's frequency not always physically near it, but they were guarding its principles. They guarded what it represented. Their presence was decentralized, hidden in monasteries, churches, and sacred groves, just like in Kemet when in Waset in Thebes, the pharaoh, the Insubiti had his soldiers, but the temples had their own soldiers too, right? But when they was called, they moved with sacred precision. They wasn't playing with you. They wasn't asking no questions. They were just gonna let it happen, right? And some were said to appear in dreams before battles or natural disasters, carrying flaming swords and scrolls of light. So they weren't just defending an empire; they was defending a sacred frequency. Okay, they were defending Ethiopia. Matter of fact, when I think, correct me if I'm wrong. I think in World War One I think it was World War Two, when Ethiopia was when Italy was trying to invade Ethiopia, and they sent out a clarion call. The people of African descent in America signed up to fight for Ethiopia, and they was denied. They were denied. Meanwhile, the folk of Italian descent was able to fight over there with Italy in them. Make that make sense, right? So they were defending the sacred knowledge that was passed down from Sheba to Lalibela, from the Gundar. They were custodians of hidden light, protecting not just Ethiopia but the people, but Africa as a whole. The Templars carried swords, but Ethiopia and Debteras they also carried knowledge. They carried light. Okay. Now, so we have the Debteras, the Zamani order, the order of Tekle Haymanot, the Afar. If there are other orders, shout out to the fam in the South, in Sudan, in Ethiopia. If there are other orders, let me know. Like and comment below. All right. Let's get it. Now, the guardians of the ark, the final covenant. Yep. Now we're right at the heart of this whole thing. The what, the who, what, when, where, and why, right? The Ark of the Covenant. For centuries, Ethiopia has held claim, unlike any other. They had the Ark. Yeah, the Ark of the Covenant. We're not talking about Raiders of the Lost Ark when they found that thing in Kemet somewhere, right? It wasn't in some kind of European museum or beneath a demolished temple, but in the walls of Axum. Okay, under watch of guardians sworn to secrecy. According to Ethiopian tradition, the ark was brought to Axum by Menelik I, the son of Solomon, and the queen of Sheba, Makeda, marking Ethiopia as the true continuation of the Solomonic covenant. This sacred transference placed Ethiopia at the center of a divine lineage. Okay, with a responsibility to preserve both the relic and cosmic agreement is symbolized. Okay, now the ark, according to tradition, according to the Ethiopian Orthodox Church, the ark resides in the Church of St. Mary of Zion. Okay, watched over by a single guardian selected through divine guidance by senior priests. Okay, and once chosen, he remains cloistered, celibate, and ritually pure until death. That's very That's that's the book of Leviticus type stuff, right? And so the guardian undergoes he undergoes esoteric rites that include fasting, sacred reading of hidden scrolls, and deep communion with the ark's spiritual frequency. His role is more than ceremonial. He is understood to be spiritually merged with the ark. By the way, this picture is by the New York Post. Okay, this he's guardian. He's the only one, right? So many believe that the guardian communicates with the divine, okay, with the angels, okay, or the ancestors, the divine entities, and receive dreams and visions connected to the destiny of the Ethiopian people. The tradition is rooted by the tradition. The tradition is rooted in the Zadokite priesthood, a Levitical line of high priests from the first temple of Jerusalem. Ethiopia is said to have preserved this lineage long after it was suppressed or destroyed in the Near East. As I said before, as I said earlier in the discussion, Moses, his wife was Zipporah, and she was Ethiopian. His father-in-law Jethro, okay, was, according to the book of Exodus, the priest of the Most High God. Keep in mind, Israel as a nation was still in Egypt. So this Ethiopian already had knowledge of the priest of the Most High God. Okay, so Ethiopia was always connected like that from the very beginning. Okay, so the thing is, who guards the ark? Okay, it's not armies, it's not machines, but monks, one man at a time, chosen for life, never to leave the sanctuary again. Okay. Now, really quick, many believe the guardian communicates with, like I said, with the divine. Okay, that's through prayer and fasting, right? And so, in the mystical tradition, the ark represents the Merkava. Merkava, Merkavah, the divine chariot or throne described in the book of Ezekiel. Okay, it is viewed as a multidimensional portal, a vessel through which divine presence enters the physical world. Okay, where the divine actually touch down and encounter everybody else. It is the ark is constructed of acacia wood overlaid with gold. The ark is also seen as a divine capacitor capable of storing and radiating spiritual energy, a fusion of the mortal and immortal realms. You see the famous talking. He said, yeah. So that the ark, it symbolized a lot of things, but most importantly, it symbolized, in a sense, the presence of God. Okay, that's what it wasn't. The ark, but put in the wrong hands, it was going to be try. They was going to try to use it as a weapon. It's not a weapon. The ark is not a weapon. It's a mirror. Only people aligned with order, with divinity, can hold that reflection or even be close to it. Okay, and so now esoteric. Yes, sir. We're gonna get into a little esoteric information to do with this ark. Okay. Yeah, the esoteric knowledge of the ark. Yeah. I had to throw a little bit of esoteric knowledge in there. Had to do a little bit of it. I'm not a a a, a Hebraic Old Testament scholar in a sense, but I still like to share a little bit of this information, right? In Kabbalistic tradition, it's aligned with the ark, with the Sherafah and Yesod. Okay, the foundation through which the divine emanations pass into from the spiritual world into the material world. In Ethiopian mysticism, this is interpreted as a conventional guardianship. The ark is both relic and the living throne of divine memory. The guardian itself, the person who's guarding it, is like a pillar, a living pillar, ritually defined, deified through service, embodying the sacred union between the Shekinah. Now, the Shekinah for Old Testament, that represents the presence of God, right? And so you have that present God's presence, and in a sense, Shekinah is a feminine term. Okay, that is the feminine presence of God. Okay, his isolation is a mystical act separation from the world to preserve the integrity of that divine current. Some Ethiopian texts even hint that an initiate uh, is hidden within or close to the ark. So there are scrolls and tablets encoded not just with the law, but cosmic geometry, harmonic formulas, and creation codes. Not only the guardian or high-ranking monks may engage with this. Okay, in this light, Ethiopian guardians are not merely protectors of national treasure; they are final stewards of cosmic protocol. Their vigilance is a message. Until this is what I think. Say until the world returns to its balance, the ark will remain hidden. Okay, until say my odds and order is restored, the covenant remains sealed. But now, I'm not an Old Testament teacher, but the Ark of the Covenant itself is made of acacia wood. That is a solid, thick wood. Okay, that is symbolic of humanity. Okay, that is symbolic of humanity, and it having that overlay of gold that is divinity. And inside, according to the Old Testament, inside of it had the rod of Aaron, and the Ten Commandments, the law. Okay, encased in that. So we as a people should be a representation, a mirror of those things. Okay, we should be peaceful, but also be ready to exude justice wherever it happens, right? And so like I said, until the world returns to balance, till peace kind of comes, the ark will be hidden, and the Ethiopians will be more than happy to keep it hidden, right? So we're gonna do a quick comparison. While the West fights over relics and ruins, Ethiopia, they guard the information, they guard the flame. The ark isn't just a box; it is frequency, and the one who guards it becomes the ark's shadow itself. So the Templars, on one hand, the Templars, they were Templar monks, but the Ethiopians were the priest guardians, right? The Templars, they looked for the ark. The Ethiopians had the ark. The Templars were into physical warfare, visible warfare. The Ethiopian guardians, spiritual warfare. Okay. And they were on one side, the Templars were suppressed by European rulers and even the Pope. The Ethiopians were protected by the rulers, right? The Ethiopian priests. So what if the Templars came not to bring the sacred, but to witness lineage had never been broken? I don't think so. I think they, in my opinion, I think they was really trying to come out and take that, just like they tried to take everything else, right? Now, really quick, sacred rites and rituals, temple protocols, and cosmic ritual science, right? Now, let's get into the innermost part, the inner science of sacred rites and rituals that bound the world of the spirit and the physical world in the state of in the ancient Ethiopian, Kushite, and Kemetic continuum. In these African civilizations, ritual was not just a symbolic theater. It was operational technology. It was a sacred science. Okay. Every temple ceremony, every incense that was being burned, every chant, libation being poured was part of this whole cosmic order, right? So Ethiopia, its legacy was carried through intricate liturgical cycles, especially in the Ethiopian Orthodox Church, chanting of the divine liturgy in Ge'ez, Geez, Ge'ez, the sacred tongue, was believed to echo the angelic languages spoken at the dawn of time. Priests would anoint the altar with holy oils infused with frankincense and myrrh. You heard that a lot. Frankincense and myrrh, only really found in that area. Substances known for their spiritual resonance. These oils were not just it wasn't for aroma. It was more than that, right? It basically those incense and the aroma was going up as prayers and praise, right? In Lalibela, the city, rock-hewn churches, sacred processions that would pass through symbolic tunnels and cross-shaped passageways reenacting the soul descent and resurrection. Every step, every bell, every priestly movement mirrored the journey through the celestial underworld, echoing the earlier Amduat in the Book of Gates. In Kemet, temple architecture itself was ritualized. Each structure mirrored the human body. Okay. Um, each structure mirrored the human body. We broke down I think we did a little bit of Hatshepsut's temple before, but we may get back into that again. Um, and in a previous video, we discussed Hatshepsut's temple. It represented the different phases, represented the different phase of an initiate, and the sanctuary or the holy of holies or Jeseru represented the mind of the person, right? And so um, the inner sanctum, where the divine image was housed, was the spiritual equivalent of the heart of or for some people that are into that, the pineal gland. Only the high priest, ritually purified, could enter and commune with the deity during those rites. These rites were synced with solar movement, especially at equinoxes, solstice, and we are in the midst of summer solstice right now. Well, about like a week or so. Yeah, when the veil between realms was the thinnest. Okay, these they were energetic equations, these chants and these incense, the orientation of altars, how the altars were situated, where they were placed. They open portals, they reset vibrational frequencies of an entire nation. So even the robes worn by the priest represented something, right? Let me see what the family's saying. Yeah, it says, Brother Melvin Reed, he said, I beseech you, brother, teach what you preach. And Brother Ferguson says, sacred science to us, but the other side, mumbo jumbo, that they can't understand. This is correct. This is correct. This is correct. To those who don't understand, they're not going to understand, right? So even the robes worn by priests in Ethiopia and ancient Kemet were encoded with sacred geometry, colors representing divine forces, patterns reflecting star charts, the thread counts aligned with numerological value. Even sacred dancing or liturgical movement was also more than say praise. It was invocation. It was a outward expression of what was happening to the soul. It was passed down in priesthood schools with each step corresponding to an aspect of the divine. The Ethiopian Kene poetry, composed in layered allegories and metaphors, were performed during rites of to conceal sacred meanings from the uninitiated. Okay, and we have things like the Timket celebration, water rituals during the Epiphany. That is during the springtime. Okay, but not springtime. That's Easter. Epiphany. Epiphany. I'm trying to get my church calendar together. That is earlier in the spring. That is like in the winter time almost. Enacted Christ's baptism, and also recalled the older Nile and the white Nile and blue Nile ceremonies of purification. Okay, flood renewal and spiritual rebirth. The merging of Ethiopian Christianity with indigenous water rights preserved ancient metaphysical science under the language of Christian idea. So when the priest raises the cross above the water, he's not just asking the blessing. There's a continuation. There's a continuation of the process. So from the Nile temples of Kemet to the stone sanctuaries of Lalibela, sacred rites maintained it maintained divine favor, divine order. So understand when we talk about rituals in Africa, we're talking about it's more than superstition. Okay, it's a custom, it's culture. And today we talked about those rights being they try to suppress it, they try to commercialize it, or they just write it off and misunderstand it, right? But they carry something higher, they carry something greater. These lineages, these chants, these processions, these rhythms are part of what we do and who we are, right? But check this out. Thought about this though. I got a question. Who are the Ethiopian people? As I was doing this, this is like something I thought about. Who are the Ethiopian people? Because sometimes we would think it's just one group. Is it this person? Okay, is the Ethiopian people, is he the representative of Ethiopia, or is it she? Okay, who are the Ethiopian people? Okay, who are they? Or is it him? You see, normally the Western world would see one phenotype or one type of Ethiopian and not the others. Okay, these guys are Ethiopian also. Okay, he's Ethiopian, she's Ethiopian, he's Ethiopian, right? They're Ethiopian. Okay, so who are they? Okay, these Ethiopian also. Okay, what happens is the commercial Western world will show you one group of Ethiopian and not show the others, which is not fair. Okay, now, but shout out to, while we out here, shout out to the Amhara, the Somali, the Sidama, the Tigrayans, the Garaj, the Afar, the Oromo, the Waliata. Okay, I may be mispronouncing it. Y'all just correct me. The Gamo, but remember, out of all these people, we're still one. Okay, we're still one. Now, so we just got to talking about the rise and fall, Knights Code, and the Ethiopian Stronghold. And that being said, this summer we are in the midst of a new series, Ethiopia, Kemet, and Kush, and Unified Sacred Art. Yeah, this is what we're doing this summer. Okay, we got a lot of things to address and discuss, so we're gonna get in on it this summer. We're gonna have a good time, and I do have some book recommendations, including the ones I just showed you, but I have a few more. Okay, we got that, and somebody asked the question: can you break down the Merodic script? We did some Meta Nature, okay, but we will do our best to discuss some of the Merodic script. It is not really deciphered, but we will try. Okay, I'm not going to say I know how to do it, but I will do the homework. Okay, shout out to the fan who put me to the task of that. So if you want to learn more about Ethiopia, Kemet, and Kush, hit the like button and subscribe. Okay, we're going to get into that. So we do have a segment. We will be dealing with, we got a special Thursday series with the Echoes of Nubia. So on Thursdays, we will have pre-recordings on Nubia. Okay. And that being said, this Thursday, we will have a recording on the Three Crowns. It is a recording. It will not be alive. It'll be recorded. So the question, who is she? I do not know. Very popular picture though. Very popular. I think it did come out. It was made in the late 1800s though. Okay. But yeah, she is from Sudan. Yeah, she is regal. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And you see the ancient scarification. And the argument is the Heru M. Aket, or the Sphinx, is the Sphinx is not a man, it is the face of a woman with Nubian scarification. Okay. Yeah, shout out to African royalty. She is Nubian. Yeah, yeah, she is Nubian. The question just, do we know her name? You know, ancestors' names are, ancestors, their names are important. Do we know her name? You see what I'm saying? But yeah, yeah, for sure. We are in agreement. She is Nubian. Yeah, yeah, for sure. All right. So yeah, so this Thursday, we're gonna have a recording. It will come out, the Three Crowns. We're gonna talk about the we're gonna talk about how these three crowns of Ethiopia, Kemet, and Kush came to be before the divide, right? And next Sunday, all right, here it is. Then Sunday, we'll enter the heart of this lineage, the women who carried it all. Okay, we're gonna talk about the role of women. Okay, the prophetess, queens, divine mothers of the Nile Valley. We're gonna get into that because without them, there is no ark, there is no Nile Valley culture, there is no order, there's nothing, right? So yeah, next Sunday, we will have another live discussion about that. So yeah, get ready for that. Now we talked about the pillar Ethiopia, the source and sanctuary, Kemet, the blueprint. Okay, um, Kush and Nubia, the corridor and continuity, the hidden code. We're gonna do this as we go along. Yeah, without our sisters, yeah, we're in trouble. We're in trouble. Yeah, these are facts. All right. Now, um, we talked about our pillars. We talked about the connecting the dots recap, historical arc, the hidden pilgrims, Lalibela, Debteras, and defender orders, Ethiopian sacred knights, guardians of the ark, the final covenant, sacred rites, and a little bit esoteric information. Now for the check roll. And if you have any questions, get those questions ready. Here we go. Oh, forgot the book. All right, books. The Wonderful Ethiopians and Ancient Kushite Empire by Sister Drusilla Dungy Houston. That's a good one. Here's another one: African Dominion, a new history of empire in early and medieval West Africa. Okay, the links are in the description. The affiliate links are in the description. The Lost Ark of the Covenant by Tudor Parfit. Okay, that's another good one. Check that out. Ethiopians and the Origin of Civilization by John G. Jackson. It's a short one, but it's a good one. Okay, check that out. That the link is also in the description also. And yeah, we got the Book of Coming For by Day. Okay, we got that, and the Ethiopians: A History by Richard Pankhurst. That is the Wonderful Ethiopians of the Ancient Kushite Empire and the Ethiopians of History. That is our anchor. That's where we're gonna kind of rest at a lot when we're doing our work in Ethiopia, right? And of course, I have my own book for the fam. This is my new book, The Crusades Jihad in East Africa. It is also out. Okay, we will do a mini discussion later on with that book. Okay, but yeah, so that's the book. Okay, so the Crusades and Jihad in East Africa. A lot of people, when we deal with the Middle Ages, we normally either deal with Timbuktu or we deal with the Crusades, but the Nile Valley had their own battles to fight, right? And so we did talk about that. Now, of course, I have a shirt. We have shirts, and that is also in the description. Also, Ujumbe shop, check it out. And roll call. Here it is. Here we go. We're gonna check roll. We're gonna see who all stayed to the very end, who didn't skip class. All right. One Voice Africa. Shout out to the fam. One Voice Africa. Karok TV. G-Man 77. Quest. Queen of Kings. Empress. Brother Mo. Brother Joseph Ferguson. Blu-ray Star Child 74. Brother Elliot Grant. Shout out to Brother Moore. He came out today. Shout out to him. Life with Melody. Okay. Brown on OC. These people either added value to the conversation or they just subscribed. Okay. Library Without Borders. Shout out to the fam. Library Without Borders. Peggy Harrison. Miss Blue. Indigo Prince. Grand Madam Tarot. The C6. Hoop Daddy 7. Abina Scott. Noob. Deborah Keaton, Kun Case, Valerie J, Comedic Nation. Yes, Comedic Nation. We I intend on bringing them back for a pretty interesting discussion. We're going to get into some esoteric information with them. That's going to be really cool. Mia Gia Mir, Gaharli Artistry. Shout out to them. Mark Carroll, Zep Tippy Slim, and TikTok family. I'm back on TikTok to terrorize them for a little bit. And if you are present, and I didn't call your name, comment here. I think Mo already jumped the gun. But yeah, if you're still here, okay. And shout out to African Royalty. Okay. They came through. Shout out to the fam African Royalty. I see some others. Brother Melvin Reed. Okay. All right. He shout out to the fam. All right, really appreciate it. Now, let me see. All right. Now, we got Books a Million. It's a Black Thing. Ethiopian Airlines, Amazon, Unice, all and Micah's hair, love me hair. The affiliate links are in the description. Check them out. Yeah, I gotta check roll. Look, I am a veteran teacher. This is year 12. Yeah, this is year 12 for me. No, you won't get credit to the end. Yes, sir. Well, shout out to Brother Moore. Shout out to him. But yeah. So if you like the content, if you liked it, share it with somebody who you think might enjoy it, or share it on your social media of choice. Share it to your social media of choice. Okay. But yeah, we are growing. Okay. There's a lot of things that we would like to do. But if there are any questions, okay, if you have any questions or ideas, you can comment it, or you can just let me know in the chat. But yeah, we just talked about the rise and fall, Knights, codes, and the Ethiopian Stronghold. Now, if you want to catch up with our Ethiopian playlist, we got a playlist on Ethiopia. And if you want to check out the connecting the dots episode, I got it for you also. What's your thought on the question is? Okay, here we go. What is your thought on summer? Can we add? So can we add it to the Ethiopian Kemet Kush trilogy? Summer. So the question is, what is my thought on Sumer? And can we add it to Ethiopian Kush and Kemet trilogy? Yeah, we can. We can put them in the mix because Sister Houston did mention those empires as a part of Ethiopia. Yeah, we can. Yeah, Sumer and Mesopotamia. Yeah, we can get down. I just had to do my little homework and put it in the mix. Yeah, I had to put it in the mix. But thing is, this is not just me talking. This is for you guys. See what I'm saying? If you have, because some of you guys will ask questions, and I will get to it. Okay, and just like when you guys mentioned Nubia, in a few weeks we'll deal with the 25th dynasty. We will deal with King Taharka. So it is already up my sleeve. Yeah, I appreciate it. Said Brother Moore said, "Good job, brother. Good content and knowledge." Yeah, that's what we do here. Okay, we got to tell it all, because what happens is, some people would amplify one side and neglect the other, right? When they would mention, say, pre-dynastic era, pre-Islamic era, pre-Christian era, but then when those eras show up, they get quiet. No, we got to tell it all, right? Good or bad, right? So, but I'm learning too. I'm learning new things too. Last spring we had the Queens of the South series, and I learned a lot. them people in Egypt, they was different. They got a little political, right? But yeah, so we're all learning together. Are there any other questions or concerns? Yeah, we have a playlist on Ethiopian Kush. We got that. So if you want to catch up with that, check that out. And we got the connecting the dots. We have that. But yeah, I think Volta mentioned Epitomac. Yeah, we're not done with him either, because here's the thing, Brother Volta. Check this out. We are going to make the link between the Sphinx, Sekhmet, and Epitomac. Yeah. We're gonna do that. We're gonna do that. Yeah, we got the little Thundercat. Yeah, we got to do that. Yeah, we got to do it. Because I think Brother Mo asked for it before, and also Heteru and Naphtaliah, how Naphtaliah was made. But if there are no other questions or concerns, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe, share with somebody, and check out our playlist. This is the summertime. This is our summer series, and I'm thankful that we're all here together one more time. But if there are no other questions or concerns, you listen to King Cam Ujumbe Podcast, Ujumbe means message, and we talked about the rise and fall. And we talked about the Knights, we talked about the codes, and sometimes before we go, whenever we hear the rise and fall, we think it's the demise or civilization being destroyed. No, it's not. It's just a continuation of the same thing, but just in a different form. You see what I'm saying? So just think of it like that. Think of we've seen these things before. We've seen the good, bad, and the ugly before. Okay. African great class. I need to catch up. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. But we got time. Okay, we have a playlist together. We have a playlist together. Yeah. Okay. Shout out to Abena Scott. Okay. Is that Abe Untu? Soto name change. Okay. Yeah. Okay. All right. So shout out to the fam. The fam is chimed in, and I really appreciate you guys. Yeah, we have the playlist. We have all those wonderful things. We have a playlist if you want to catch up. We have one on Kush. We have one on Ethiopia, and let's learn together. If you have questions, don't be afraid to ask. Okay. If I'm gonna try to respond, and but what I will also try to do is answer it. Okay, and I'm gonna try to put it in like a slideshow or something like that. But don't forget, we do in a few days. What's that? Where go? Sunday, the role of women. We'll get to that. Sunday, we're going live. The role of women, how the queens of Nile Valley impacted the Nile Valley, and the three crowns. The three crowns of Kemet, Kush, and Ethiopia before division. That's Thursday. That will come out as a recording on Thursday. Yeah, I really appreciate you guys. Yeah, another great bill. It was fun. I enjoyed. All right, you guys. If there's nothing else, I will talk to you guys later. And you listen to King Cam Ujumbe Podcast and Ujumbe Me's message. And you guys have a good one.